Hey everybody, it's Khara Crossway Brindle. Welcome back to the channel. New face for all of you, but so excited to have her with us because you need to know about what she's up to. Welcome, Rachel, to the channel.
Thanks, Kara. This is going to be so fun.
Absolutely. So obviously we nerd out about all things, but like financial therapy, and you're an art therapist. So tell our
Mhm.
listeners, our viewers, what you're up to and kind of what you're about right now.
Yeah, so I have these two specialties that at first seem like they should have nothing to do with each other, which is art therapy and financial therapy. And it's really sort of the two threads of my life that for a long time were very separate myself. And since I discovered financial therapy, I've been able to really bring these two interests together about how we can use sort of the non-typical sides of our brain, parts of our brain to think about money. And so I often work with folks who are very visual thinkers and also who have just felt left out of the personal kind of finance conversation, can't picture money, can't visualize it. And so I bring creative approaches to the world of money.
So cool and so needed. I mean, like for the visuals, like they have so much power and
Yeah.
significance, like so cool. So offline, you and I were talking about this metaphor you'd been developing for these people who needed like a visual, something approachable, something
Mhm.
that these are my words, but like softer to approach something that feels just like daunting and kind of dry. So do you
Yeah.
want to talk about how this visual came to be and then we'll show it to
Yeah.
everybody?
I think soft is a perfect word. I use that a lot because
Mm.
I think personal finance, it seems to have kind of a hard edge, and that is really because it's through the lens of white patriarchy. But money doesn't have to be explained that way. And so, yeah, it's a good question. Where did this metaphor come to be? It's honestly how I have always come to understand investing. Sort of one of those things that, like, once I put into words, I realized was distinctive. Like, oh yeah, I somewhere along the line, my brain put together this visual of
Mhm.
understanding investing in the metaphor of gardening. So actually, and after some of our offline conversations, I was like, I should really like put that together, and that's
Yes.
been really helpful for my clients and in the groups that I run.
Yes, so I'm so excited to debut it with therapists because you and I have had conversations that therapists feel overwhelmed by money a lot of the
Mhm.
times. If we think of like big generalization,
Yeah,
a lot of us were avoidant or are avoidant with our money. So like anything
yeah,
that's going to help people really like anchor in what we're talking about, in this case, investing, if we can make this more interesting, I'm all about it. Because like just the word investing, I'm like, huh, right? Like, and I'm a
right.
financial therapist.
Yeah, yeah, it is. There's just kind of and that's often when I start these conversations with my clients or groups, it's like let's just do a brain dump of all the words that come to mind with investing. And often it is this like ugh, that's like the
Yeah.
first word, and which I completely get. So it's like I totally normalize that. We dump it all out. Would you like to talk about investing in a different way? And my goal for this is just to help people say, yeah, I could set up an account, or yeah, this isn't beyond my ability because it really isn't. It's not beyond anyone's ability to do this. It is also like very simplified, I will say, not getting into the nitty gritty. Neither of us are investment advisors, but this is just
That's
sort of
right.
a framework, metaphors, visuals to even like, hey, I could think about the topic of investing.
Yeah, so excited. So yes, when you're ready, let's like show them some pretty
Okay.
pictures and see if it's more approachable.
All right, so investing using a gardening metaphor. Again, I am a registered art therapist. I'm also a candidate for certified financial therapist. That's not on here. My company is called the Money Healing Club. It is an online support group of sorts where we have weekly live gatherings to talk about money in different and cool ways.
Love it. Oh yeah, all therapists need to know what you're up to. So this is great.
Oh, and I will say, I'll go backwards. The Money Healing Club is also a great add-on. Like for clients who are maybe doing some intensive one-on-one work, this could be a nice support group that would amplify any one-on-one work that they're doing. So it's not really as much a replacement, but as a really nice, yeah, augmentation to one-on-one work that clients might be doing.
Mhm.
So just quick disclaimer, Kara and I, neither of us are licensed to offer specific investment advice. You will see some examples in here. We can't recommend particular investment strategies. It is a complex world, even though I'm going to give you some simple ways to think about it. So, what works best for one person might not be suitable for another, depending on your financial situation, goals, and risks. This is just for education. So I just want to cover
Very
myself
important.
here. Okay. So we're going to start with these visuals right now. If you are a W-2 employee, this is kind of like the visuals of what I think about different accounts. So here we've got the faucet, and this is what your income, right? It's like water. And so, we often talk about accounts being like buckets, right? So one scenario is you have, one main checking account for monthly bills where all your income comes out of, and a lot of your expenses come out of as well. So this makes sense. Most people have this. Of course, slight differences if you're self-employed, but we're just going to go
Mhm.
along with just a W-2 example for here. So sometimes we are trying to figure out this for a while, figuring out what is my income? Can I cover my regular monthly bills? Then I like to introduce a second bucket, which is savings for annual and out of the blue expenses. Khara calls them
Mhm.
periodic expenses, where, okay, we kind of need to have two buckets here to make the cash flow work. Okay. So sometimes I really start here. We got to have this a little bit sorted out before we introduce more, more buckets. But let's
Mhm.
say we have this more or less sorted out. It's never going to be perfect, but we have kind of an understanding of these two buckets. Then we start talking about this other stuff. So I have this sort of in a cascading order of priority.
I love that.
If,
So
yeah.
fun.
So if you see, Kara's like, I don't know if we need slides. I was like, no, we totally need these
We
slides.
need to.
So if you work at a place that offers a 401k, that is an absolute priority. You drip your water into that bucket and you get that set up. If there's matching, you work with your HR department to max out that match. Okay, that is investing. Okay, we'll get more into that. But if that is available to you, I recommend that you participate in that before even thinking about additional savings and stuff, because if there's matching, that's free money, folks.
That's right. Hmm.
The other thing is because your employer will remove it from your paycheck, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything about it. While it is your account, it's your responsibility. Funding it, you're not going to have to think about. So it's just, if you have access to 401k, absolutely sit down and set it up. It's your right. Also, that account lives with you. If you leave that company, it belongs to you. Okay, there's rollovers and stuff like that, but just so you know. So that's like number one. If it's available to you, please participate.
Hmm.
So whether or not you have a 401k, then we're going to talk about filling up a bucket. Now it's just a bucket. You see how it's different than a planter. Another
Hmm.
bucket for emergency and long-term savings. This would be more of a cash account, a high yield savings account that at the moment is getting some decent interest. So definitely participate in this. This could also be a CD, a certificate of deposit, where you've got a little more cash, not invested. Okay, a bucket is cash for like a longer term thing, let's say for true emergencies, like you lose your job or need to leave a job because it's dangerous or toxic, need to leave a relationship because it's dangerous or toxic, a need to help out a family member in need, lots of things, true emergencies. We all recently went through the pandemic. I think that really brought home why the 3 to 6 months of living expenses are really important to have in cash. And it feels like a lot. I know it does. But if you have a bucket for it, you can start funding it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I could see a lot of people just living with these three buckets and one planter for a while, and you are fine. Okay. You are fine. If you have these three buckets and one planter, I'd say this is a pretty good, stable system. If you get a promotion, get more work, whatever it is, maybe you and your spouse have more money, then you can keep dripping on down. The next
Mm-hmm.
drip would be a Roth IRA. So whether or not you have a 401k, anyone can open a Roth IRA, and I'm going to talk about that more. And that is a planter, not a bucket. It is a planter. And this is something that you set up yourself, your employer doesn't. Almost anyone can open up a Roth IRA. It's really tax advantaged. So, and I'll get more details about what a Roth IRA is. So, if your employer does not offer a 401k, they don't all, then this is going to be your next focus of having your own Roth IRA. If there are maximums. If you max that up, max that out, then the 529 you might have heard, that's a college savings plan if you have children. You could fund that after you have funded your Roth IRA. I would recommend. Also, another option is just a brokerage, which means a non-retirement investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you've got extra money, then that would drip into a brokerage account. So this is like more or less an order of priorities that
Oh,
I would recommend. If that makes
mhm.
sense. Obviously, some flexibility. If you're self-employed, it looks a little different, but it's generally the same order of priorities. And just notice that the buckets are different than the planters, and I will get into that as we keep going.
Yeah. So
Any
Rachel,
questions on that, Khara?
I do have a question for you. So most of our viewers are therapists,
Mm-hmm.
self-employed. So what if we remove the 401k, because a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
don't have that, would
Yeah.
this now be a SEP planter, like a
Yeah.
SEP account? Okay.
There are a couple options. It almost seems like the IRS is coming out with new products all the time. There is a SEP
Oh.
IRA and there's a self 401k. So there's
Hmm.
a couple options. Definitely talk to your CPA of what makes sense. But yeah, I would replace this with a SEP IRA. You can put in I think up to 25% of your net, your profit for your
Mm-hmm.
year into that. So yeah, I would replace that with some kind of retirement vehicle, either called a SEP IRA or there is a self-employed 401k.
Got
So
it.
those
Thank
are the
you.
options. Yeah, totally. Any other questions on that?
Nope. Excited to
Okay,
see more.
cool. Okay. So one question is, what is an investment account? And so I like to think of an investment account is the container for investments. And the different types are really just dictated by the IRS. They just have different rules. They have different rules about when taxes are taken from them, what the limits are, who can and can't participate. But they're all, so an investment account is not the investments, it's the container for your investments to grow in. So you'll see these are all different containers and they each have a variety of investments, right? A variety of plants, which I will get
Mm-hmm.
into next. So these are the most common ones. SEP IRA, which we were just talking about for self-employed folks, 529 for college, Roth IRA, 401k, separate brokerage account. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They all belong to you, but they are just the container. If you put cash into an investment account, it sits there as cash because you haven't bought any seeds yet. See where I'm
Mm-hmm.
going with the metaphor?
Yeah. Like
The
this is like the
cash,
soil.
yeah, the
Till we
cash
put
is,
seeds in it.
with the slide before, the cash is just water. Okay, that's the other thing. Like cash is just water. All right, it doesn't grow, doesn't really change. It's just water. Seeds are what grow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are like, so just wanted to kind of make that clear. The investment account is your planter. It's the container for your investments.
Beautiful.
Okay, the seeds are your investment options. Okay, so here's kind of an overview. Really, all you can invest in is stocks up here or bonds down here. And they're very different. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
stick with me. So stocks are like vibrant, like tropical, rapidly growing, eye-catching flowers. They're sort of like they catch everyone's eye. They can grow very quickly, but not always. They're a little finicky. Okay. They are very sensitive to the weather. Let's say that.
Mm. I
The
love that. Yeah,
weather, right? Khara, you with me? Isn't this
I
great?
got it. Yeah.
Okay. The weather is the market. You can sort of know trends about the weather. It generally does this, but you really can't totally predict the weather. And stocks are very sensitive to the weather. So
Mm-hmm.
stocks are, when you buy a certain share of a company, you don't really need to get into that. It's good. They can really go up and down. Okay. Bonds, on the other hand, are like shrubs or cactus. They are reliable. They're usually government bonds. So they're a lot more guaranteed. They grow slowly. They are reliable and they're kind of their benefit is really in the long term. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're thinking about, you're designing a garden, if any of you are gardeners out there, you want both, right? You want your like hardscapes. You want the stuff that's sort of always going to be there year in, year out. You don't have to do a lot for it. They're going to grow slowly. They're maybe not that like gorgeous, but they're there. And then you intersperse with your flowers, your annuals, perennials that are really flashy. That is more like your stocks. And you want both, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like in a drought year, stocks don't do so well, but bonds are just fine. And then you have a great year where there's rain and sunshine and you have incredible stocks, and that's great. But you're not going to depend on that every year.
Right.
So The products that have come up for those of us who don't necessarily want to learn investing and picking individual stocks are two things: ETFs and index funds and mutual funds. These two products are similar. These types of seeds are similar in that they're a mix. They're a mix of stocks and bonds,
Mm-hmm.
but they're slightly different. Okay, a mutual fund is like a bouquet. So the reason I want to think of it as like a bouquet, there's a mix of things. You've got your flashy roses and you've got your, baby's breath and the green foliage. So you've got like a variety of investments in there, but a florist has handpicked it for you. And if you think about it, like a bouquet is more expensive. It's also maybe just right for you and your occasion, like a wedding bouquet. But you're paying for that. It's expensive because you've had someone kind of hand pick this stuff just for you. Okay, so mutual funds are a little more expensive, and I'll explain why. But basically, you're paying a florist for a mutual fund. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, ETFs and index funds are like getting a packet of wildflower seed that you kind of go like, la, you sort of like throw out and you say, good luck. There's a mix. It says, hey, this is, this mix has been, designed for your climate or whatever it is. So it's like, there's been some thought put into it, but there's no management. There's no
Mm-hmm.
florist. You set it out there and you kind of let the market, the weather, do what it will. It will probably work out. Also, no guaranteed, but there's a good mix in here that it's a nice way to have a garden without a lot of work on your part.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you with me so far on all of our metaphors?
Yes. Is it also based on the bouquet being handpicked? We're paying for that. Is there also an assumption that the ETFs and index funds are a cheaper option for folks, or like a
That's right.
smaller investment that way? Okay.
That's exactly it. This year, maybe buying a packet of seed. It's not free. You're buying
Right, right,
something,
right.
but it's quite a bit less expensive than the florist. Yep.
Got it.
Cool. Okay. And I'll say here that, I think a lot of people think, oh, I can't get into investing because I don't want to like research companies or pick stocks. You absolutely don't need to. Really, what most people are doing are doing the wildflower mixes and the bouquets. Really, not a lot of people are choosing individual stocks and bonds unless they're super into that, unless they're financial advisors. My husband loves tinkering with that stuff. Great. You do not have to have a beautiful garden. Okay, you can
Mm-hmm.
you can get help and get some of these mixes that are already made.
Love that.
Cool. Okay. Cultivating. So, okay, if I buy all these seeds and they're growing in my garden or my planters, then like what does that mean year after year? Like when do I get my money? How does that work? Because you have now bought seeds. It's no longer water. They are seeds. They are growing or sometimes not growing. Like sorry, I have a fly. You know, I don't know if you garden, Khara, at all, but like, there's a certain viability in seeds. They don't all sprout. They just
That's
don't.
right.
You get enough
Mm-hmm.
of them that like enough will, and also with experience, you kind of learn this. But excuse me, year after year, they will gradually grow. And so, you're kind of fertilizing this through regular contributions. Like if you have a 401k, a little bit of your paycheck is constantly buying more seeds. Okay. And helping that garden get more and more robust over time. Now, there is such a thing also as pruning. So remember how like those annuals and the flowers are flashy, but can also grow really quickly. The general rule of thumb is when you're younger, you can tolerate more risk, so you have more flowers. A little, some of the bushes, but mostly flowers to really like capitalize on that. As you get older, that shift, it needs to shift from more shrubs, fewer flowers, gradually over time. This is kind of the rule of thumb with financial advisors. So that's sort of pruning, as you go along with your garden, as it matures, you're always going to have some mix of flowers and shrubs, but that ratio is going to generally change because you really want the shrubs. When you are coming to retirement age, you want something that's really dependable. You can't gamble on tropical flowers in Colorado when you are in your retirement in your 60s or 70s. But you could tolerate that when you're younger. So that's kind of
Mhm.
pruning. There's a thing that just shifts over time. And
Mhm.
like I said before, the weather is like the market. You can know sort of trends. You cannot predict it. Even the best financial advisors, no one can predict. All they can do is make some assumptions based on the past, and know that, hey, there just is some risks like there is with the weather. So
Mhm.
that's kind of what like the cultivating over time looks like.
Love this. Yeah, super easy to understand. Keep going.
Yeah, good. Okay. So IRAs are very cool because pretty much anyone can have them. Anyone can garden in an IRA. There are a few limits to it. Like very high earners cannot have, I should say Roth IRA, excuse me, there's an error here. A Roth IRA, high earners can't do it. If you have zero earned income, you can't have one. And if you live in another country and you don't file taxes, you can't have one. So you can see that like it's still pretty much anyone
Mm.
can open an IRA and contribute to it. The limits that the IRS sets change every year. Like this year, 2024, the limit is $7,000 per person. By the way, you do not share an IRA with your spouse if you are married. Each person
Mm.
has their own. It is not a shared account.
Good to know.
Yeah. Okay. So these are kind of like some steps. You guys can screenshot this. Number one, if you don't have a Roth IRA already, choose that flower pot. You're going to select your flower pot at like, it's called a custodian. And you may have heard of these places, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. They're kind of like a bank. They're not really a bank, but it's like a bank. You're just going to open an account. You're going to
Mhm.
open a Roth IRA. Okay. Pretty much anyone can. In that process, you're going to decide who's going to inherit your garden if anything happens to it, and that's your beneficiary. So that all happens when you first set it up. They're going to say, who is your beneficiary? The default is usually your spouse if you're married, but it's up to you. It doesn't have to be your spouse. So that is up to you who inherits your garden. Then you're going to decide, okay, how am I going to buy these seeds? Is it going to come from my savings account, from my checking account? This is something that you and whoever helps you set up the account can do. And I will say, usually at all of these places, if you're a new account owner, they'll usually give you half an hour of their time. Like they will help you. They want you to invest with them. They will help you set this up and make sure it's all right. So like, don't worry. There are people who will really help you out. I'm a big believer in just really milking customer service for all it's worth. So make sure you get like half an hour of their time. So then usually there's kind of a setup, like you connect your bank account, initiate your first transfer. Okay, so that's great. So that's just water going into the flower pot. You have to
Mhm.
buy seeds. And I've heard horror stories of people who thought they were investing because they were putting money into a retirement account, but it was never invested. So it just sat as cash.
Mm.
So it's sad. So make sure you're actually buying seeds, you're buying investments. Okay. So you have to buy into a fund or else your money is just cash or water. So these are just like there's a nice option called a target date retirement fund. And again, I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but I just want to talk about this option because it was new to me. And it is sort of like it's a mutual fund. So there is a bit of expense. Someone has put these together for you. But what's nice is it is based on the year you anticipate retiring, and
Mhm.
it changes gradually over time. So it really is the only investment option that is a set it and forget it if you don't have an advisor. So when you're searching for investments, you can search for target retirements and they're usually in 5-year increments, 2040, 2045, 2055, et cetera. And then you can purchase that. Other options you may have heard of are index funds and ETFs, and there's lots of different ones. I cannot get into it. I'm also not an expert in this, but there's index funds that we're going to track the S&P 500, which means like the 500 top companies in the US. You're going to buy a little bit of each of those companies. It's an index, which means it's going to
Mhm.
take like a broad range. ETFs are similar. That you can think of index funds and ETFs as pretty much the same thing, but that's your wildflower seeds. That's just like your group of stuff, and you just kind of see what the market does. Um, let's see, and then what's ideal is if you can set up regular contributions. So you're constantly buying these seeds automatically. Usually they have a setup where, okay, I'm going to transfer $100 a month and I want that $100 to buy more of whatever investment you already have going. So just you're slowly buying more seeds.
Mm,
So I think this is one big like mind shift. If you're used to saving your dollars, investing is a little different because of the risk. Seeds have risk. They don't all germinate. They don't all germinate the same way, and it's less predictable.
mhm,
So you're buying more seeds with the hope that a lot of those seeds are going to grow and that it's okay if some of them do. That's sort of the numbers game that you're playing. So you kind of let nature and the seasons take it from there, set it and forget it.
mhm,
I should add this to the slide. Your best asset as a person investing is time. Absolutely,
mhm.
your
Yep.
best asset is time. If you think about a mature garden, like your garden often doesn't really take the first couple of years. But an established garden is so valuable. So that's like, even if you start with $25 and it's all you can swing right now, start it now. Not only for the habit forming, but it is the over timeness of
Mhm.
investments that really has its power, just like an established garden.
Totally.
Okay, just real quick, and I really recommend you Google this every year because it could change. But right now, as of 2024, so when can I harvest? When can I use this wonderful garden? So for a Roth IRA, 59 and a half right now is what they say. That's when you can start drawing from it. Also, if you have a major disability, you can draw from it. If you have received someone else's Roth IRA, a grandparent or something like that, you can use it then. You can withdraw up to $10,000 for the first time home purchase. Qualified education expenses. There's some medical expenses you can do, but there's limits there. Pay for your health insurance during unemployment. So they're all exceptions, but I do want you to really think of you are keeping it till 59 and a half. This is like your number one priority, I would say. But no, it is your money. There are some other exceptions where you can harvest from this. So with a Roth IRA, your withdrawals, when you take that money out, you don't have to pay any tax on it. Because when you bought those seeds, they were bought with post-tax dollars. So basically, the US government already got their money from you.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
That's why Roth, and Roth is the only account that does this, that when you come to withdraw it, it's just all yours. You don't have to pay taxes on it like you did with your employment. So pretty good, because the assumption is, again, assumption, the weather, is that tax rates are only going to go up. So right now is probably the least amount of tax you will pay. That rate will likely go up as time goes on. Great, of course, that could all change, but that is the rule of thumb right now.
Mhm.
Okay, there are maintenance costs of your garden. Okay, like I talked about before. So mutual funds, ETFs, index funds, all of these things, you don't buy them for free. They all have something called an expense ratio. So that's just a little bit of vocab to learn. Expense ratio. So it's sort of like hiring a hands-off gardener. Doesn't come by very often, but it's cheap. Okay. So granted, mutual funds are a little bit more expensive. That might be a little more of a hands-on gardener, but you want to think like it's someone's kind of there in the wings, but not really. But you're not paying much for it, so it's a win-win. Now, if you go with a financial advisor, you do not have to, but if you do, it's kind of like a personal concierge gardener who totally plans, maintains your garden, comes and weeds and waters and changes out plants. Like they are really there with you. They charge a fee called assets under management, usually AUM. It's usually about 1% of your total garden. No matter if your garden grows or not, it's really important to say.
Mhm.
Also, you're still paying for the seeds and everything. It doesn't like replace that. So often financial advisors are choosing mutual funds, ETFs, and index funds. So you're paying for that fee, you're paying for the plants and seeds, and you're paying them at about 1%. And while 1% might not sound like much, it is not just 1% of your growth, it's 1% of your total account. So if your account only grows 10%, they're still taking 1% of that entire account. Or if it tanks, they're still taking 1%.
Mhm.
So usually financial advisors make more sense when someone has accumulated quite more wealth. There isn't really one number, but if you are in the beginning stages of your retirement planning or investing, just know you don't have to have a financial advisor. You can take some of these steps on your own. Um, the world of gardening, financial advising is changing. Sometimes now they're just charging a flat rate to just consult with you. And that's a great option if they're not going to take a section of your retirement account. But they're hard to come by. So it's kind of tough. There's a real barrier. Sometimes a financial advisor won't even talk with you if your net worth is under, $200,000. So I do think that climate is changing. I think that there's this realization that more people need more help. But again, utilize the customer service at your Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab. Talk to those guys. A lot of them are fiduciaries and they will help you. So yeah, so that's kind of like what level of gardening help are you going to get? Okay, can you see this, Khara? I know it's
Yeah,
kind of small.
a
It's a
little
little bit small.
smaller. Yep.
So I just want to show real quick how you can find expense ratio because it's such an important factor. So like I just pulled up a couple different things at Vanguard, a couple different funds at Vanguard. And you see there, you look for expense ratio and there's going to be percentage. And this says 0.04%. Okay. And then I'm going to compare that with this one, which is a target retirement date account. And that is 0.08%. So it's twice the fee of a target retirement account versus an index fund. And you don't really see the fee. It's kind of weird. It's like, well, when did they take it out? It's sort of all built into you buying the stock. So just so you know, like it's all kind of built in there. But this is a great way to compare options. Now, so you might say, well, I'm going to have a mix of these because this one's a little bit more hand-picked. This one's not hand-picked at all. The other thing I want you to look at is just like, what are the returns? And look at the long term, not the short term, but the really long term, like 10-year. This one gets, almost 12% on average over the last 10 years. This one down here, which is the target date retirement fund, gets, let's see, 8%, 8 or 9% over the 10 years. So, this one's a little bit more hand-picked, a little more expensive, but is also steady. This one has had more gains. So as you age, this is just going to change. So just want to show up. This is the kind of thing you're going to look at and be like, but these are the two terms that are most important: expense ratio and just returns over 10 years. Okay. Like I said before, time is your most important asset. So what I did is I took screenshots of one of these funds. Now, if you invest and you get so excited and you check your investment in 1 week and it's gone down 20% and you have a panic attack and you want to pull out all your money, it's within your right, but most people will say, hold your horses. Yep. Because here is the same, this is all the same fund. Over 1 month, look at this. It's like up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay, especially here, really took a dip. Yeah. Over 1 year, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up. And look, it's higher than it was over here over 1 year. You back out over 10 years and it's slow. You see how like the bumps are a lot less noticeable? From here to here, it really does trend upwards. Now, granted, there's no guarantees, but time with your garden, you want an established garden. You want to set it and forget it. Don't check your account too often because it can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster. Like if you had invested here and then like it tanked like 25% in the first week, first day, you could really panic, but you got to back off and say, these are seeds. Some grow, some don't, but I bought a handful of seeds. Okay, so special note, you don't have to have a garden designer as an advisor. Okay, you can, but you don't have to. If you choose one, make sure they are a fiduciary. This is the other important term. So a fiduciary has some ethics that they have to go by, a duty of care and a duty of loyalty. So duty of care generally means they have to do what's in your best interest. Fiduciaries aren't supposed to sell you products that they get a kickback from, so there shouldn't be bias. If you talk to someone who says, oh, I'm a financial advisor, but I'm not a fiduciary, I would be careful because they might be trying to sell you products like life insurance policies that they get a kickback from. So it's not in your best interest, it's in their best interest because anyone can call themselves a financial advisor. It is not a protected term. But the term fiduciary is more specific. It means they kind of have more of an ethical mandate.
Hmm.
And they have to do what's in your interest first. Okay. So that's just another important term to learn is fiduciary. Okay. How does this gardening metaphor play out for you? Does this help you, Khara, or anyone listening, kind of feel like, oh, I could maybe like buy some seeds.
Yeah,
Maybe I could get a little planter that I haven't had before and play around with it. That is my
absolutely.
ending questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think why we got so excited offline with this possibility is it softens this concept. It makes it more approachable.
Yeah.
I feel like now I'm going to have images of bouquets and planters in my head from here forward. So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah. Good.
Which just feels again more gentle and like approachable. So I think
Yeah.
that's going to be worthwhile to anyone who watches this video all the way through. Of like, here are the
Mhm.
concepts, here are the terms. I'm just so excited to put this out there because I feel like you've just given people some financial wellness and some financial education that was missing in like a very approachable way of
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm not getting lost in like jargon. I'm getting lost
Right.
in imagery, which actually
Yeah.
works better for my brain
Yeah.
too. And I don't
Yeah.
identify as like a creative, even though I create a lot of things. So that's interesting.
I think you're a creative, Khara. I do think you are.
Yeah, I just haven't identified that yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like I have questions for my own financial advisor from this
Mm.
presentation. I have
Mm-hmm.
questions for my family. I have questions for my
Mm-hmm.
community. But
Mm.
yes, I think it's really now thinking about investing in some of those seeds and just making
Mm-hmm.
sure that they're being tended to, that it is not like a
Yeah.
set and forget for a lot of people.
Yeah. And like, I talked to some people who maybe have a financial advisor that they sort of inherited from their parents. And it's like, well, wait, do I really need a concierge gardener? I think it's really
Mm-hmm.
fair to just ask. And I'm not anti-financial advisor. I think there's absolutely time and place for it. But just know how that gardener is getting paid. How are they getting paid? Are they a fiduciary? What are the expense ratios on the plants, the seeds that you've bought? Those are the only like really key terms that are industry jargon that I think are really worthwhile doing. I have a lot of my clients just ask their if they have a financial person, are you a fiduciary? Um, what's your fee? Because a lot of times you don't know, especially it seems like there are planners that are sort of handed down within a family. It's like, oh, well, it's old Chuck. Chuck handles
Mm-hmm.
all of our family's money. It's worth asking. Chuck is getting paid something, and really worth asking what that is.
Yeah. So I think on this fiduciary piece, like they have to answer, but like, is there a way to also
Mhm.
like double check? Like, are they allowed to like lie? I mean, I don't want to be like
I
all sketch
know.
on this video, but I'm just like, well, what's the proof? What's the evidence?
I know. I know. I don't know if you can look up with your regulatory agency. That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
Like you can with a therapist. That's a good question. I just don't know that. I mean, they should answer honestly. One thing I think people could answer that's a little squarely is, well, no, I'm not a fiduciary, but I do what's in your best interest.
Mm,
And it's like, well, how are you getting paid? Oh, well, I get a small percentage, but I only give you, offer you the products that are best for you. And that might be true, right? I do think there's some people who aren't full on fiduciaries that are really trying to offer some products to people that aren't at that investment level. Um, but yeah, it's just good to know. It's good to know. Check around. Ask people like within your family, within your community, like is there someone you trust, things like that. But it's hard because kickbacks are real. Like someone is getting paid and you got to figure out how they're getting paid,
sure.
what
And
you're
not be
okay with.
blind to that. So like the
Yeah.
financial therapist and both you and I are like, just like know the numbers, ask the right questions. Like we know more now than we did before we had this
Oh,
conversation. So
yeah.
like that's the gift of like some things that people might be pondering from here about their
Yeah.
seeds, their plants, their water, their buckets.
Yeah. And some people want to go full on DIY and maybe they shouldn't, like
Mm,
someone's trying to manage this like ridiculous garden on their own and they do need help. So, the metaphor plays out that way too. You can get help. So just, yeah, being careful about who's in your garden.
right, exactly. There's that
Yeah.
imagery.
Yeah.
Um, this has been amazing, Rachel. How do people find you if they have additional questions or want to know more about the Money Healing Club? Like, what would be some contact info for
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah, so everything is at Money Healing Club on the socials and my website, moneyhealingclub.com. I also have a free mindful spending challenge that's on my website. When you sign up, you'll get 7 days of lovingly curated mindful spending prompts that will hopefully get you into a more calm place around spending. And yeah, all my info's there, and I offer free insight sessions and the club. I have a more intensive program for people who really want to get into money healing. Also, just have like a support group option. So, all things money healing and creativity are at the Money Healing Club.
Amazing. Well, I'll make sure to put everything below because I know people are
Thank
going to
you.
want to check that out. But thank you again for this beautiful visual, this metaphor that I think people are going to be like, I get it
Oh,
now. So thank you for
okay.
that gift.
Yay. Happy gardening.
All right, viewers, stay tuned. We'll see you for other videos.